All right, to the members. Oh boy, that is not on. Okay, to the members. Good morning. Thank you for showing up at 8 a.m. for a transportation appropriations meeting the day after the Super Bowl. Y'all are very kind. Of course, we didn't have a team in the mix, so it shouldn't have been so bad for you. Let's begin with a word of prayer before we get started. Bow with me if you will. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, you are so good. Lord, I thank you for the sunshine and for the rain, how important that is for this earth. Lord, as it presents challenges, and there are people that are going to have pretty bad days today with the weather and the traffic and accidents. And Lord, I pray that you'll be with them. Lord, I pray that you will be with us this morning. Help us to be great stewards of the resources that you've given us. I thank you for each member here, their families that are back home, and I pray a hedge of protection around them. This I ask in your name. Amen. Okay, we've got our fearless leader, GDOT, Commissioner Russell McMurray. If you'll come to the spot that you is most comfortable, and we will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The 25 big budget.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is great to be back before this committee once again. Thank you for moving 24 expeditiously and the support we had in the amended 24. 25's budget presentation will be a little more streamlined. But we certainly want to acknowledge, again, a very solid budget for the Department of Transportation. So you have a handout in front of you. We'll just jump right in. You've seen this slide. It's a conditioning slide on the second slide of the four fund sources that the revenues that come to the Department of Transportation for us to deliver our mission. Of course, the motor fuel tax, the Transportation Trust Fund, consisting of those three components of the electric vehicle fee, which a lot of people forget about. I get asked about that a lot, but we do have an electric vehicle fee that is commensurate with your annual vehicle registration, an annual heavy vehicle impact fee as well, and the hotel fee constitutes the Transportation Trust Fund. And then the Transit Trust Fund is the rideshare fees or taxi black car service, which is the 50 cents or 25 cents per person if it's a shared ride. And last is general funds, which go to our budget. So those are our fund budget sources.
Would you mind, so everyone on this committee knows, but honestly, the Transportation Trust Fund has got the same initials as the Transit Trust
Yes.
Fund. Someone fell asleep at the wheel on that one. It seems very similar. So we've talked about the source of funds. I didn't mean to imply that I was looking at you.
I don't think Abby was responsible for that.
Absolutely not. Absolutely, she does such a wonderful job and keeps me in line. But so we've talked about the source of funds. Would you go through quickly the use of funds through those different
Sure.
buckets, if you will?
Okay, yeah, absolutely, and it is a mouthful, and I do get tripped up myself between the TTF and the other TTF when you put initials behind them. So the Transportation Trust Fund, so the three in the middle there, by statute, up to 10% can be dedicated for transit purposes, but basically 90% or more goes to basically surface transportation. And sort of the genesis behind the Transportation Trust Fund came out of HB 170 going back into 2015, where you as the General Assembly were trying to seek $1 billion of increased funding to really take care of state of good repair of roads and bridges and focused on safety back in 2015. And you know, as we look at our budget, not when we get on the next slide, we'll talk about it, to see where our budget has come from 2015 to today. HB 170, in my opinion, has been satisfied. Now, back then, I don't think, as we've presented in the previous budgets, the cost of doing business has changed so greatly back to 2020. HB 170 back in 2015 did what it was intended to do, but now the challenge is we've had some variables or maybe an audible since it's the night after the Super Bowl that of a play we didn't see coming. So
Well played, sir.
Thank you, sir. I'm trying. Okay, so now the Transit Trust Fund, okay, the rideshare fees were derived from legislation that came after HB 170 back in 2015. Josh probably can give me the number. Is it HB 105?
Sam Watson.
What was it? Transit Trust Fund? HB, well,
105.
anyway.
105. Sam Watson.
There you go. And so again, it was really an initiative that where the state began to fund transit. Previously, prior to this legislation, the state's funding of transportation was subject just to general fund appropriations, and pretty much the most of it was in, for transit purposes, were general funds in our transit budget, which allowed us just to match some of the FTA capital funds for transit operators. So a very small share. So when we look in a moment at where the Transit Trust Fund has risen to, it is quite a statement for the impact for transit at a state level that is at record level, in fact. So it has performed, as I recall the fiscal note on that, it is performing at or above what was predicted. And as I think as we all know that we all are still rely on rideshare services as much as we ever have, if not more. So I think it's still a robust revenue source that is dedicated solely for transit. And when I get into that, I'll talk a little bit about where that transit money goes. So thank you. I hope that sets a little bit of a stage of the Transportation Trust Fund versus the Transit Trust Fund. Maybe we'll come up with a better name. Keep it, because it gets confusing, and I'll show you that in a moment, how we tried to lessen the confusion through the budget process. Okay, so slide 3 gets at the revenue sources, and so as you can see, an add from the base of $113 million, 73.4 million in the form of excise, and that's two components. That is excise collections and also interest earnings on motor fuel from the Department of Revenue. And I remind you that excise is a one-year look back. So what was collected in the prior year is appropriated into the next. So this is what was collected in 24 being appropriated into 25. Then the next row there is the Transportation Trust Funds we just talked about, with a $26.2 million add, and the Transit Trust Fund with 8.8, totaling now $32 million of that Transit Trust Fund. And I remind you too that the Transportation Trust Fund and the Transit Trust Fund is a 2-year look back, so it's actually reconciling actual collections 2 budget years ago, which is then appropriated to us. And make sure Selena is nodding. Okay, correct. And then state general funds, 4.7, almost $4.8 million. So that brings total budget for 25, $2.5 billion. It was a lot more fun saying $3.9 billion in amended 24. And let me just mention that too, because as we've talked about, and we've talked about in the Transportation Committee with Chairman Jaspers, is that deploying the amended $24 will go into fiscal year 25 and likely some into 26. So it has a compounding effect. So 25 is still a wonderful budget here to move forward with. Okay, on the next slide, slide 4, again, always just graphically like to show where the main uses of the dollars are going. In the tallest column there on the left at $1.2 billion is capital projects. That's the combination of capital construction, capital maintenance, and local roads administration. So that constitutes about 49% of the state dollars in our budget. That's going to deliver projects. The next highest column at 21%, or over $527 million, is our routine maintenance. That is keeping the roadways up, roadsides, doing all the state of good repair work, including maintenance contracting, of which I'll speak to when we get into the actual budget. The next column at 293, almost $294 million, about 12% of the state budget for transportation, is general operations. This consists of a lot of things, though. So general operations, and one is just overall admin of the department, but also it has the program delivery budget, so the people that are delivering the projects, getting the projects ready. It has planning, it has data collections, among others. Again, just short of showing this is where the people are, and this is the doing, if you will, of getting things ready for delivery. Next is LMIG. We had a good discussion about LMIG in both committees, this committee and Transportation Committee. $220 million, which is based on 10% of the actual excise. So that was the statutory appropriations between 10 and 20% of excise. So this recognizes that. Then we show GO bond debt.
Would you go back to LMIG just a little bit and remind us again the rationale behind our moving our LMIG dollars, the additional quote-unquote LMIG dollars to a different category, because there's also another 10% or 30% of there. Would you go into some detail on that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. So in the amended 24, if you remember, the governor had a $200 million ad that was in the LMIG. In working with this committee and the Transportation Committee, it was recognized, and through conversations with ACCG and GMA, it was recognized that when you appropriate it in LMIG, statutorily there is a 10 to 20% of excise has to be appropriated to the LMIG program, and that's one code section. That's in Title 32 under Transportation. But under 48, in Title 48, there's a section that went into effect when the TIA regions went into effect in 2012. Referendum was in 2012. That said, if your LMIG, when you get LMIG appropriations to GDOT, then local governments match is either 10% if you're in one of the geographic regions that passed T-SPLOST, the original T-SPLOST, or TIA as we call it at the department, or it's 30% if you did not. And so basically by law, when money was appropriated into the LMIG program by Title 48, and I can get you song and verse if you need it, it then says, well, there's a 10 or 30% match with it. So by lifting that out of the LMIG budget program and being recognized as LMIG, that money was put into another budget program called Local Roads Administration, which allows for the department to help with funding and the finance of local delivered projects, which historically was a way for us to have a little stopgap measure to deliver federal aid projects with local governments. So that was the sort of the move in the amended budget year that passed the House. So, okay. I won't jump into the rest of these. I'll talk about them a little bit in budget. But before we look at more detail, I'm going to show you on the next slides really the changes that were reflected to the base budget. So if there was no change, I'm not going to really touch on it. We can talk about any of those items at your pleasure. And the other thing I want to do is certainly thank the governor and thank you for your support of the cost of living adjustments recognized in the 25 budget of the 4% or $3,000 reflected there. That is reflected throughout our budget. I won't talk about each one of those, but it's reflected in each of our budget programs where there are people. And obviously there was the DOAS insurance adjustment. You know, we're just like everybody. Our premiums get adjusted from time to time. That's reflected throughout our budget as well. And Mr. Chairman, we look forward to working with you on probably having to do a few redistributions inside those cost of living adjustments just to make sure we're lined up with people and budgets. When this was projected, obviously headcount continues to change. We're actually growing our headcount, trying to do that. So we'll work with you guys as we need to, or where we need to, and appreciate your favorable support of just getting the deck chairs rearranged to the proper location. Okay, slide 5. This is the deep dive, and let me just explain these tables. So down the left, we have our budget programs. Then we have the fund source. Again, I appreciate that recognition of Transportation Trust Fund versus Transit Trust Fund. But you'll generally see Motor Fuel Transportation Trust Fund more than Transit Trust Fund. You'll only see Transit Trust Fund in the transit program. And, of course, State General Fund. So what we've tried to do is list the program that's in the order that's in the HB 916. We've put it in that order and then showed you where the changes are. And my intent is just to talk through some of the major changes. And the first one, well, you'll see GO bond debt there, a small increase at $3.4 million. That's due to the interest rates. Obviously, interest rates are up, so there's a little bit increased in the GO bond debt, totaling 112 million. But the next thing I draw your attention to is the first circle there in capital construction of adding 16.5 or right at 16.5 million to bring capital construction to a little over $1 billion. That is, again, trying to deal with the increased costs that we've presented to this committee before. So again, to help us deliver on the capital program. Next circle there is in the capital maintenance program, and as you recall, in the amended year, $100 million was added to this program as well. So in 25, we're adding $35 million. It brings us almost to $200 million total. In capital maintenance, think of resurfacing, think about bridge rehabilitation and repair, and also striping. So when you see fresh stripes on the roads and reflectors like we need this morning when it's pouring down rain, I was very happy to see the reflectors this morning. So that's the sort of the three main things that capital maintenance does. So as we get close to $200 million, we leverage federal dollars as much as we can to do capital maintenance projects. So this $200 million will leverage another $200 or more million to try for resurfacing in particular for state of good repair. So just want to spend a little time on that. That's what that $35 million does. We'll turn over to the next slide, slide 6, and then we'll see LMIG. As we've talked about LMIG, you'll see a $7.3 million add to LMIG, bringing it to $220 million. That is reflective of being 10% of the actual excise total. If you went back to that previous table where revenues were and you looked at excise, this now marries up to be 10% of the total excise in the FY25 budget. As we go down through this table, everything else were small adjustments based on COLAs and DOS adjustments. Program delivery is not circled, but I will talk about that just for a moment. That is a $7.6 million add. About $3 million is that for COLAs. Again, that's where our people are, surveyors, environmentalists, designers. That's where our people that deliver the projects are based, including our project managers and program delivery folks that deliver the projects. So the biggest part of that is for COLA and adjustments for insurance, but also there is recognition for about $4 million to go toward, again, retention and trying to, again, keep people in these roles that do this work. I believe my data point was for our project managers, we have about 1,200 active projects at the moment, and we have 27 project managers. So that's a pretty big share, and now we use consultant resources to help us manage that as well. But
is that also included in program delivery?
That is, yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. So for the committee, if you recall, there is a fairly substantial increase in the number of projects that we are working on throughout the state, and there's a fairly small increase in program delivery,
yes, sir.
Delivering those projects based on the amount of additional projects that we have.
Yes, sir. Amendment 24 is going to accelerate a lot of work, so they thought they were busy, and they're about to be even more busy. All good work is rewarded with more good work at the department. So, all right. Next slide, slide 7. Routine maintenance, we have an add of $34.5 million. We talked about this previously, the same thing, increased cost of construction, the increased cost of materials and supplies to repair guardrails and repair pavements and do the work we do, and including increased contracting costs. So in 25, we recognized, again, about the same as we did in 24, to increase by $34.5 million just due to those increased costs. About $27 million of that is going toward dealing with increased costs. The balance of that is doing the COLAs and DOAS and what have you. So again, it's routine maintenance is the foundation of the department. It's like your house, it's like your car. You've got to take care of those things first before you always want to take care of your house before you think about planting the flowers or putting the pool in the backyard. You want to make sure your roof's good and everything's in good working order. Next, I'll just call your attention to transit, and it shows up in that second column, the Transit Trust Fund, again, as we talked about now, totaling $32.4 million. That is tremendous. Again, I believe, as I recall the fiscal note, that's probably is on par, if not tracking above what we thought it would do when that was created. And again, let me tell you how those dollars have been deployed. Obviously, they are deployed 100% for transit utilization. We use, again, the first part of those to do some match to the programs that we administer. The Atlanta Transit Link Authority, the ATL, affectionately known, does the 13-county metro area coordination. And then a big portion of those, the largest portion of those, as the trustee of those, will go to the Atlanta Transit Link Authority for their priorities here that they decide through the ATL board. About $11 million comes to the department again for the FTA match, and then the Rural Transit Trust Fund and the Small Urban Transit Trust Fund formula program we talked about previously, which is very much LMIG-like, of where by formula distribution, we take the total amount of money, 55% of that goes to each of the transit providers based on population, based on the census information of the population that they serve. Then there is a sort of a bonus if you do multi-county or multi-jurisdiction. Then you have ability to have more formula dollars. And then the last part of that formula distribution is basically to the very challenged counties where the median household income was below $45,000. So that percentage is allocated to each of those counties, which are really need transit, but obviously are, have a challenge with median household income. So this is where those dollars are being deployed. So really sort of three things: matching some FTA grants that we administer outside the metro Atlanta area, the Transit Trust Fund formula program. We don't have any good we have great marketing people at the department. We just don't use them. So coming up with terrible names like that, but the Transit Trust Fund formula program, really a great shot in the arm again for the state to make investments in transit across the entire state. And then largest portion of those dollars go into the Atlanta Transit Link Authority here in the 13-county metro area for their purposes by their board.
And these are for capital improvements, does not supplant local, and the local transit does not supplant local dollars.
Yes, sir. It has to be in addition to their base operations. Okay, so just point those few things out. You'll see our attached agencies, payments to the ATL and payments to CERTA. I'll certainly just speak for a moment. It's always good to see when this may look bad for CERTA, but it's actually a good thing. If you see the red in parentheses, we really emphasize that as a $19.3 million reduction. That is actually a reduction due to a guaranteed revenue bond debt rolling off. So that was previous debt service we're paying. Now that debt service has rolled off, which freed up the 19.3, which was part of, and those are transportation trust funds fees. Those were redistributed back through some of these ads that we talked about through the budget. So that's where those dollars were utilized. We do in payments to CERTA, we still do have, there's $12.9 million for the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank baked into the base, as well as other debt service. The biggest part of that, again, is our debt service that CERTA handles for us, which is the federal debt service. And that wraps up the presentation, Mr. Chairman. I'd be glad to entertain questions or comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, on the transit, some spent in Atlanta and some spent in rural. Would be a way to get a kind of a list of how much money we're talking about that goes to certain parts of rural Georgia? I mean,
Yes, sir.
I know it's everybody wants a little bit, and so when you get a little bit, it doesn't go as far as if you can get a big bit. And so
Yes, sir.
yeah, but if you could kind of get that'd be
We
good.
do. We indeed, we tried to formulate outside the ATL area, we tried to formulate this very much like LMIG so that each transit operator could, annually know what they could expect, again, to not supplant what they're doing, but to be additive and to enhance the transit operations that they have. So we have that formula distribution. We'll be glad to spread it to the committee for your information.
That's good. Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Representative Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. I wanted to go back to what you said earlier about the cost of living adjustments, and you said you might want to come back to us and talk about rearranging the deck chairs. I wanted to get a little bit more clarity on what you mean, because I want to make sure that we're not talking about not increasing everybody the same, especially what y'all might consider the lower level or the lower waged employees.
Yeah, thanks for that clarifying question, because our intent, the changes that may need to be made, this was a snapshot at time when OPB set these numbers based on head count, and actually it would be probably adding more to each program. It would not be taking anything away. And again, it would still be 4,000, or the 4% or 3,000. I'm sorry, I got that backwards. So it would still be that amount. So this would not, because to your point is, we're still challenged. Our entry level maintenance employees are $15 an hour. We still need to work on making that more attractive.
Thank you.
And thank you for that question, Representative Evans. They go to the dollar amount and rearranging the deck chairs to make sure. No, actually, at this point, there were 23 jobs in this area instead of 22 or 21, and thank you for that. That's important. To my leader, Fran.
Thank you, dear brother. How you doing, Commissioner? The question I have is about the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank. Who, just in a general sense of Georgians, who qualifies for that? And how do they go through the process of either getting a loan or a grant from the Transportation Bank?
So the Georgia Transportation Infrastructure Bank is actually led by the State Road and Tollway Authority, and so they actually do the call for projects. City, counties, and CIDs are all eligible entities, and they simply can either apply for a loan, which is preferable. That's the way banks should work. But most people like the grants more for some reason, and so they apply for those. And I can tell you, we usually have one person that is a party to that selection process, but it's led through CERTA. And but anybody usually is looking for a loan usually are pretty successful as long as it meets those criteria.
Leader Beverly, so several years ago, this committee, if you recall, we actually increased the base budget on that by $3 million, I believe, and we get bang for buck for that. Is such a wonderful deal that we have some CIDs that actually tax themselves, and for the rest of the committee and the leader I know already knows this, but we get great bang for buck. It's a great program. Thank you for asking that question.
And Mr. Chair, to that point, I know Janine Miller and the folks over at CERTA can share. They have a great multiplier effect. They show you how much they invested and how much the ultimate outcome was, which is a huge multiplier effect that does a lot of good. So
we leverage state resources with the locals and with the feds sometime. It goes a long way. Any other questions for?
I'm full of them this morning.
of something for sure. Absolutely,
Yes.
Vice Chair.
Just kind of a history. I know I'm just pulling a number out there. 20 years ago, we had probably 8,000 to 9,000 employees. Back in 09, 010, we had about 5,300 employees. And you announce this at every board meeting. And where are you about right now?
I'll have that exact number, I think, this afternoon, but we were right at 3,900 employees last month, 3,890 some odd employees.
Right.
And so, yes, sir, your memory is spot on of the staffing size we've had. We actually dipped to right under 3,600 a few years ago, and that was not a good place to be. We're trying to target 4,100 employees. And the biggest part of those, and to Representative Evans' question, is in maintenance and operations. And as you know, when weather like this, and I appreciate in your prayer, Chair, that recognizing people out there doing the hard work in bad weather, you know, they're out there dealing with clogged drains. We had 185 flooded last night hopefully you either boated across it or got here after that.
Ahead of time.
But, you know, people are responding in bad weather, inclement, you know, a little over a year ago, the tornadoes that came through Griffin and Spalding County, you know, people that have to respond. That's where the bulk of our staff is, and that's why we still need to have that bench strength of 4,000, 4,100 employees. So when it's hurricanes, you know, I am appreciative of the precipitation today is warm and wet and not white and fluffy or icy. But when those things happen, it is all hands on deck to be responsive to hurricanes, winter weather. You know, it takes the entire department to, you know, keep Georgia moving when those things happen. So that's why we need to. That's why we're continuing to try to build back and looking at those strategies. And again, I'd be remiss not to thank the House and the Senate and the governor for the previous recognitions of the pay increase last year and in this current budget year, the prior year, and then what's being proposed in 25 for the COLA. It does help. We've seen our retention curve change, but we still lose somewhere 550 to 600 people a year from the department, which means we're recruiting and hiring 560 people, and then we've got 600 people, and then we've got to add to that as well to try to raise the head count. So our shout out to our HR folks and all the hiring managers. They're working very hard to not only backfill what we lose through attrition, but also grow the head count.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think you have exhausted the questions that we have from the committee. I do thank you. We look forward to working together with you to get the numbers finalized about where we need to be with on the budget. So,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see we have our planning director, Janine Miller. If you'll come on down, I appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you for having us this morning, and always appreciate your leadership on all policy fronts, but particularly transportation as well as the remainder of the committee. We know you all are busy, but we truly believe that transportation is the backbone of our communities and our economy. So we appreciate your time and attention and support. I believe we're getting the PowerPoint pulled up. And as we do, I want to also thank you for the GTIB question. Those are important grants and loans that we are able to issue from CERTA in collaboration with GDOT as we review the projects, review eligibility, and make sure that we are allocating those dollars to the most effective projects in both rural and urban areas. In fact, this year for the first time, we were able to support all rural applications that came in. We had 4 rural applications, and we were able to fund those at 100%. We will continue to do so were you to give us the enhancement that is recommended in the governor's budget. That will be our aim. We do know that rural communities have similar transportation challenges as metro areas by way of needing to keep roads well maintained and safe, and often, in some cases, have less financial resources to do so. I think we're getting close here.
Janine, if you will, while they're diligently getting the PowerPoint ready. So I mentioned one of your roles.
Yes.
You actually have several hats that you wear.
Yes, sir.
So as we're coming up with, as we're filling in before your presentation, would you tell us kind of what you do and the different hats that you wear?
Yes, sir. In addition to being the GDOT Director of Planning, which have been very privileged to do and work alongside Commissioner McMurray and his team for 3.5 years, I've been, for the past year, also the Director of the State Road Tollway Authority, as well as the Georgia Regional Transportation Authority and the Atlanta Region Link Transit Authority, ATL.
And just as you said that, the screen came up. So that's a wonderful seg. So continue.
Fantastic. You ready? There we go. Okay. Just a quick view of the numbers, which has payments to CERTA in transportation trust funds. We will. These are the ones that are not from the rideshare fee, but the ones that can go to transit, and the total funds of $93.5 million. As Commissioner mentioned, we have a reduction of $19.7 million because of reflecting the debt service that has been decreased. So our total budget of transportation trust funds for 2025 is recommended to be $25.8 million. Roughly half of that is for GTIB appropriations. The remaining $12.1 million is debt service, and about $360,000 for the work that Greta does. So Greta and CERTA are combined administratively in the work that we do at our agency.
Would you quickly go through the mission statement, not mission statement, but the general overview for Greta,
Yes.
CERTA? It almost feels like we're in an education committee. So when you start talking about LMIG and TTL and TTA and Greta, CERTA, it's almost a different language. So
Yes, sir.
for the committee members that we don't deal with this every single day, would you?
Yes, sir. My apologies. Yeah, let me give you that background. So the State Road Tollway Authority is a 70-year-old authority whose predominant job that started out as toll collector, as the facilitator of the building and financing and collection of tolls for toll facilities around the state. Currently, we have 67 miles of express toll lanes in Metro Atlanta. We also, at CERTA, are the finance arm for GDOT. We partner with them for design build, any multi-year contract for big projects. We partner with GDOT on the financing, so GARVI bonds, guaranteed revenue bonds, when those are applicable for toll facilities. So we, as an authority, have the ability to issue debt, and we back that with revenues from GDOT. Georgia Regional Transportation Authority is a 13-county jurisdiction that has multiple statutory roles, but in current practice does two main things: reviews and approves developments of regional impact. Those are private sector developments that meet certain thresholds for residential, industrial, and commercial volume of traffic flow. So Greta is tasked with doing transportation analysis in coordination with the Atlanta Regional Commission and GDOT, and makes recommendations so that those large developments have mitigated traffic impacts. And then the approval of the TIP, as it is known, another acronym, Transportation Improvement Program, is a federally required set of projects that come out of the Atlanta Regional Commission. By federal law, the governor of a state approves metro areas' TIPs. In Georgia, the law allows the governor to delegate that approval to Greta, which it does so. In the last 25 years, there have been countless TIPs and amendments to the TIPs that have occurred. And in fact, later this week, the Greta Board will meet to review and approve the Atlanta Regional Commission's 4-year TIP that's before us. The Atlanta Region Transit Link Authority is the operator of the express bus service, which serves within the 13 counties commuter bus service predominantly into the city center in the morning, and then back out to park and ride lots in the afternoon/evening. The ATL also does transit planning for Metro Atlanta in that same 13 county region. That's long-range planning, and then also reviews and approves local governments who have a proposal for a referendum in front of their voters. Gwinnett County is one of them. The ATL board has approved their project list as of about almost 2 weeks ago now. So the Gwinnett referendum will be able to go in front of the voters in November as a result of the statutory role that ATL plays in that. There are a few other things, and we'll talk about those when we get to later in that presentation.
So we are still not back up to the level of ATL ridership that we were pre-pandemic, which had gotten up, and it was really going great, and we're still off pretty substantially, as I understand.
That is correct. That is typical of public transit around the U.S. after the pandemic. There are multiple factors that contribute to that. So Express is right in the mix of the typical, I would say, as are other Metro Atlanta transit services as well. We owe you a transit annual report. By law, it's called an annual report and audit. We're calling it the transit report. That will be out to you, we hope, within a couple weeks. We're going to print soon. And that will show the ridership throughout the region, as well as other metrics that are of interest to investors, taxpayers.
Let's please not do an acronym on this one, too.
That's exactly what we meant to avoid with the new name of it. Does that help, Chairman? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. So I'll talk briefly first about the State Road Tollway Authority, our annual trips on our express toll lanes, which you can see in the colored corridors there. Our first corridor was I-85, as you all know. We converted the HOV to express lanes in 2011, and then extended those express lanes north. So that's one lane in each direction. That is the only facility you can ride on for free if you have 3 or more people in your car, and your HOV status does need to be declared to us ahead of time through the Peach Pass app or by calling our call center. But you can see that our express toll lane trip volumes have been increasing, climbing ever since the pandemic. As you know, we were one of the first states to open up and recover from the economic impact of the pandemic, and our toll lanes reflect that. These again are simply decisions that drivers make if they are in need of getting to their destination more reliably or quickly. They'll hop into one of our express lanes, which also include I-75 in the Northwest Corridor, which opened in 2018, and I-75 in the South opened in 2017. Those 2 I-75 facilities are reversible. Today, those decisions about when the reversal happens is done in partnership with GDOT, who executes those reversals. I also want to point out that as of last month, we are interoperable with the Easy Pass. So I don't know if any of you ever travel up to the Northeast, but we are now interoperable. You can go through any Easy Pass toll booth and not have to stop and pay if you have your Peach Pass transponder on your vehicle. So in addition to the Sun Pass, which we've been interoperable with from Florida for many years, as well as Quick Pass in North Carolina, there are a total of 19 states that Peach Pass drivers can use with their transponder, including states in the Northeast, Midwest, Virginia, West Virginia, et cetera. On to the ATL budget. This is, again, transportation trust funds. $13 million is in the base. That leverages about $15.5 million of federal funds, which are not shown here, not shown in the budget. $8.5 million of that is remaining CARES Act money that is supporting us, and we're very thankful to be able to continue to use those dollars. But we do see a reduction from the prior year by $2 million in the governor's budget. And I will explain, and to your point earlier, Chairman, about the ridership, we have not seen those numbers recover in Express. The ridership is about 1/4, about 28% of what it was when we entered the pandemic as a country. We have seen a good deal of recovery. You can see a steady climb there from the 2021 biggest hit there, and we typically have lower ridership in December, and we'll see it come back up. So we are taking a look at how we can redefine the ride, as we're calling it. That $2 million, we believe, is something that we can sustain because we do need to make reductions in the service and pivot the service to something that is more reflective of commute patterns in Metro Atlanta today. So here are the routes that we have, and park and ride lots that it says not leased, meaning owned by the state. We do that in partnership with GDOT, and then we also lease from private landowners where our express buses, again, pick up in the morning and drop off in the afternoon. Most of our destinations in the morning, origins in the afternoon, are in the city center. So we have undergone an operational analysis to enhance efficiency, aligning ridership with the supply and demand of travel patterns. And we want to also take a look at the way that the new commute patterns work and a new, acronym called IPECs, In-Person Employment Centers. Those are places where, in order to do the work, you have to be at the job site. And that might include places, as you can imagine, like the airport, like hospitality and healthcare facilities, educational facilities, distribution, manufacturing. We've done a review of where those are, and this is what the data is showing us. Analysis that we are able to use nationwide databases and understand where the concentrations of those in-person employment centers are. And if it's shaded in a darker red or any sort of yellowish red there is a concentration in those areas of in-person employment, in-person work. And with that analysis, we've been able to take a look at our service and likely to show that there are reductions that we can make and new services that we can offer that will not just improve ridership. It's really about making sure those in-person employment centers, those employers there, have access to workers throughout the Metro Atlanta area. Those that are in the wage or salary area, that wage or salary range, that can really benefit from a transit option and access more workers. So today we have 27 routes, and potentially, as we proceed with the further implementation and analysis of this, we might go down to, of our current routes, 27 down to 10. 6 of which we would stop at the MARTA stations, and I'll show you where those are. That is to leverage our existing and high-performing rail. If there's a service that you want in the ground transportation that is more reliable even than an express lane, it is the MARTA train. Those trains run on time, and we want to leverage that and improve efficiencies and access for our customers. So we are proposing, and I've spoken at length with colleague Greenwood over at MARTA about this, and we've collaborated with the MARTA staff. There's more work to be done, but we're excited about this potential partnership.
Can I ask you one question?
Mm-hmm.
This is coming from a very rural legislator, and I probably should know this. So one of the concerns that you would possibly have with lowering the number of buses that are running, what happens if, so morning and evenings they're running pretty consistent, but in the middle of the day that my kid is sick and I need an escape pod, as it were, to, hey, I got to get back home. I took the bus in this morning. There's going to be several this afternoon, but it's 11:30 and I need to get home. Is it fairly easy for the commuter on our bus lines to navigate how to get back in off times?
It's a great question, and whether or not it's a plan, an unplanned need to get back home, or a planned one. In other words, our commutes today are not 9 to 5 anymore. There's often times where folks will work a half day and therefore not able to ride express service because we don't offer midday service. So we do think that's part of the lower ridership that we're seeing now in this new work schedule paradigm.
Okay, thank you.
But we do have a partnership with the Georgia Commute Options, which offers a guaranteed ride home. So those folks who were signed up with that, in case of an emergency such as that, they can leverage those services. That is administered out of the Atlanta Regional Commission in partnership with GDOT. You can tell we're an integrated set of agencies working for Georgia travelers.
Is that fairly expensive service?
The guaranteed ride home?
Yeah.
We can get you more information about that. I don't
Okay.
have the details
Thank you.
with me. But it's a great question. So in the 13 counties, we've taken a look at our buses, our routes that have lower ridership per trip, and those are the ones that we would reduce. The ones that are the 10 that we will keep are the ones that have above average and above average ridership per trip. We're also seeing that reverse commute opportunities are out there. What is reverse commute? That does not mean your trip home. That means folks who might live in the city and work in the suburbs. So there's opportunity there to, and again, enable those riders who might live or work outside of MARTA's 3 counties and are in the 10 counties around MARTA's service area to access MARTA and to access services in other counties, crossing county boundaries. And then the new market opportunities are what are the IPECs, in-person employment centers, Fulton Industrial Boulevard. We even think Avalon Alpharetta being served in that North Fulton area from Cobb and Gwinnett is an important service to explore. I want to be sure it's understood there's a lot of work left to do here. This is what our computer analysis and lots of interviews with stakeholders in the business community are indicating, but we need to go through fuller implementation, business case sort of review of the costs and schedules. We also need to go out to public involvement and do what's called a Title VI analysis that's required by the Federal Transit Administration, since they do provide a lot of the dollars that enable the express service to run. So this is the as is to be potential of the system. Those are those yellow rings there where we would no longer have those services at park and ride lots, but we believe we have closer park and ride lots. We can get out of leased services and save money, save taxpayer dollars. And then where there are the red triangles is where the MARTA service would, the express bus would connect to the MARTA service. I think we've also got a handout for you. One other thing that I mentioned I would tell you about is the ATL Rides app. If you've got this handout, you've got the QR code to pull down this app, which is a very, it's new, but it's growing in popularity. It enables riders to plan trips across jurisdictions, across transit providers, shows multimodal options, has multiple language support, can calculate what your fare will be automatically. And that is the first differentiator from a Google Maps option. We also provide real-time transit reliability information. So on that ATL Rides app, folks can see when their bus or train is going to arrive, and enables us as transit operators to look at demand response, express. ATL does not have demand response. That's typically like Medicaid and Department of Labor, Department of Education supported, but the local do, such as MARTA, Cobb, and Gwinnett, have that demand response. So we can capture that data on trip planning and provide that information to our local partners. And that data is also then available for us for other planning purposes for transit services. So I wanted to make sure to point that out. It's an exciting option. It's an important option, we think, for Atlanta commuters. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. So to the committee, do I have any questions? To the man with the best title in the House, Mr. Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just a couple quick questions, and this is sort of tangential, but how does it? Are you guys under any? Do y'all have any studies going for high-speed rail going from Atlanta to Savannah? And I would add that hopefully it'll pass through Macon as it heads to Savannah. Is there anything underfoot for that?
It's a great question. I can partially answer it. So ATL, again, its jurisdiction is only 13 counties. There is a study that is underway. It's called a Tier 1 EIS being done out of GDOT's Intermodal Division that is underway, just got started, reviewing high-speed rail, passenger rail options from Metro Atlanta to Savannah, likely through Macon, although the routing is, options for routing is one of the things that occurs in the Tier 1. So the commissioner and his team can share more information with you about that. They're just getting started, but that work is underway. It was also included in the FRA's corridor identification program that just was announced, I believe, a month or so ago, the Atlanta to Savannah line. The Southeast Rail plan was done, about 6 or 7 years ago that indicated Atlanta to Savannah as a potential route. Others include to Nashville, Charlotte, and down to Orlando, Jacksonville and Orlando. The challenge with any rail is, number one, to make sure that it is a service that customers will choose. So it has to have on time, faster than a car often, lower cost than an airplane. And that's one of the exciting things about that Southeast Rail study, that they looked into all of those customer factors. Not only is construction then, once that's proven, the business case has been proven there, the construction costs and the operations typically need to be subsidized. There are few markets in the U.S. where those services can support themselves, such as in South Florida. They're looking at a line from Las Vegas to L.A. There are very few services or origin destination city pairs that can financially support themselves and require then public subsidy of some sort.
Just a quick follow-up, Mr. Chair. So thank you for saying that. The second question I have relates to, so in Middle Georgia, you have these sort of emerging markets with Rivian coming sort of north, and then obviously Hyundai south. Is there moving workforce from sort of Middle Georgia to those areas? Is there anything where a guy or gal in Middle Georgia could jump on a train or jump on some type of transportation to get them to access some of these opportunities that are growing around the state that may not be right in their backyard?
That's a great question. Again, that's outside of the ATL's service jurisdiction and would be more of a question for Intermodal to look into and explore. But ATL does support, beyond the 13 counties, a van pool service that is actually operated by Enterprise. It's called Commute with Enterprise. Enterprise does its own marketing, and they do look for customers and potential there. So that would be something we could, as those plants get into further along in construction and toward operations, the department could partner with Enterprise on that review.
Thank you very much.
What a great advocate for Middle Georgia and Macon area. I don't know, he didn't say anything about South Georgia, but Chairman Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being with us today and for all that y'all do for transportation throughout this state. I know it's difficult when you have a dynamic state like we do, where you have rural areas and then you have metro areas. My question to you, and I probably know the answer to this, but I grew up in West Georgia, Villa Rica, about I-20 West. And I remember when MARTA was first being talked about and it came to fruition, we'd go drive from Villa Rica to the MARTA station over at H.E. Holmes, get on and go to the Dome, go to the Omni, those kind of places. And I know that there's been kind of that gravitation away from the rail line. But when I look and see all the growth that's happened around the peripheral of Atlanta, around 285, is there any discussion at all about looking and extending those lines to some of these more populated areas? I mean, the railroad track runs from in downtown Villa Rica. The Norfolk Southern rail line goes right to downtown Atlanta. And, you know, in my mind, we can't pave our way out of congestion in this state. And we're behind the 8 ball as far as I'm concerned on rapid transit. You know, I know the people out in the west side didn't want MARTA because of what it would bring to our area, the growth. But here we are 40 years later, and we have all that. And we don't have transportation. And I just had some questions as far as what the pie in the sky might be for transportation.
Sure, that's a great question. Like I said, MARTA trains are the most reliable surface transportation we have. Unfortunately, the cost to build heavy rail like that is become unaffordable, not just for Metro Atlanta, but throughout the country. I don't have the recent statistics on the costs per mile for heavy rail build-out because we don't have any heavy rail build-out in our ATL long-range plan because it is so expensive. In fact, my understanding is Gwinnett had that as an option in one of their prior referenda, and because it consumed so much of the revenues extending the MARTA line, rail line into Gwinnett County, because that would have consumed so much of their 1% sales tax referenda that they were putting forward, the voters rejected it. There just wasn't going to be enough service throughout the county, and they've gone back to the drawing board. Gwinnett County has a comprehensive express type service that is going to be rubber tired, were the voters to fund it, on roadways that provide a reliable service. So it's called bus rapid transit. In fact, MARTA has a rapid, it's called MARTA Rapid, under construction right now in the Summerhill neighborhood. So it'll take, it's going to be a dedicated pathway on a roadway from downtown Atlanta south to the Beltline. Right. That is going to take only 2 years to build and is going to cost a fraction of what it would be if they extended a rail down there, and provide reliable access through bus rapid transit. We are doing that with express toll lane build-out. Georgia 400, we're in P3, GDOT and CERTA are in a P3, public-private partnership procurement right now, which would have 4 BRT or express lanes transit, because it'll be rubber-tired on the express lanes. And it will have stations where people will feel like they're boarding a train. There'll be level boarding. The vehicles will be very streamlined, and it will feel like riding a train, but those vehicles will be on the roadways. So it's the most affordable, economical, and quickest way to build out express transit into the suburbs. Georgia 400's first will soon be underway, we hope, with a 285 express lanes transit, and then I-20 is the third set of segments, both east and west, that would have those express toll lanes where bus rapid transit would be included in that development, both of construction and operations.
Thank you. That Summerhill route's really nice. I took that to the Eggs and Issues, and I was really impressed by that.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You appear to have dutifully answered all the questions that we had. And I thank you for that. So one of the things that, as we go forward, and I wish I could do an invitation to my good friend, Chairman Todd Jones. So one of the things going forward in the future, perhaps autonomous rapid transit buses, rubber-tired, going forward. That appears to be a very futuristic but safe method of transportation.
Most vehicles were automatic transmission.
That is correct. So as long as you're looking down the line.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for being here and answering these questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
With that,